and we shall be speaking about all matters and things emotional intelligence. I am going to ask you to, Rose, to enable the chat function. If we can have the chat function enabled, and guys can tell us where they're logging in from. Where are you logging in from? Just tell us where you're logging in from as we start this conversation. Let's see if I can see any chats coming through. Not yet. Where are you logging in from? Who do we have today as part of our participants? I can see we have Margaret, we have Scholar, we have Smiley. We'd like to hear from you. We have Popola. Okay, great. So as we're continuing, I hope you can tell us where you're logging in from. My name, as I said, is Vicky Karuga, and I will be talking to you today about beyond skills, creating an EI-driven organizational culture. And this particular session is just meant to talk about how can organizations be able to use the very skill of emotional intelligence to drive a certain organizational culture that they want to see. And I'll start by briefly defining what is emotional intelligence. I can say I have a few answers. I have Scholar from Nairobi, I have Margaret from Nairobi, and I have Otieno from Isiolo, Kenya. You're very welcome to this particular webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the chat. There's a Q&A function. Annie from Nigeria, welcome very much. It is a pleasure to have you, absolute pleasure. We have from Lagos, Nigeria. Yes, thank you. Very, very welcome. We have a Q&A function. In case you have any questions, you can also ask, and we shall be able to answer them as we go along. So I'm going to start by just briefly defining what is emotional intelligence. And on the chat now, you can put a few words for you that speak to what emotional intelligence has been for you when you think about it. What has it been for you, emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence is a lot of things. And a lot of the times it has been studied, and we have found that there have been some behaviors or some habits that people have that allow them to be successful, not only at the workplace, but also in life. And these habits have to do with our self-awareness, how self-aware we are of our strengths, of our challenges, of our emotions, how they come into play in our day-to-day lives, of our learning needs, then how aware we are of others, how we're able to handle other people's emotions well, both at work and in our relationships. And when I think about emotional intelligence in a nutshell, what I like to say, and I'm going to just put up, I'm going to just show my slides a little bit, is that emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, and perceive meaning to be able to recognize, to be able to name the emotions that we go through, to understand these emotions, to be able to express these emotions, to be able to reason with, and to be able to manage these emotions within ourselves and within others. Applied at work, emotional intelligence is about how intelligently we use emotions to achieve desired results. So at work, it's about how we use the skills and the competencies around emotional intelligence, and we use them to achieve the desired results or a goal. And for example, in business, it's about how you use EI to achieve business objectives, or to achieve what the organization stands for or is looking to achieve. So for instance, if we have a team and we are in a research and development function of any organization of a product, and we are looking to grow the product or develop it and innovate it, then how do we use the skill of emotional intelligence to foster teamwork within this division of research and development? How do we use collaboration? How do we create a safe space so that people can share their ideas without feeling like they have been, I mean, sometimes that they are being, they're not in a place where the ideas are being ridiculed. So when you use at work, it's how you use these emotions to achieve the desired results. So I'm going to look at that through the lens of a 6 competency model, which we call the Genos model of emotional intelligence. And first, the first question is always around self-awareness. And for an organization, it is to ask ourselves, as an organization, are we self-aware? So do we carry out activities around self-awareness for the organization? For example, are we continuously conducting surveys to get information or data about us as an organization? So if you're looking to use EI to drive a certain culture, have you done a baseline survey first to see what kind of culture is there? What are you dealing with? Before you even go towards the solution of or the desired state, what you want your culture to be. And the more you drive, the more you become self-aware as an organization, you might also start seeing some of this systematic organizational constraints or things that hinder or support growth of culture. If you are working in a team, it's about being aware about who is in your team, who is supportive about the kind of culture that you want to see, who is perhaps struggling with that kind of culture that you want to see. It's about awareness, raising awareness. And we can use EI skills to drive organizational culture by constantly also asking questions and getting surveys around who we are, what we are about, what is the emotional climate of an organization. For example, we do have a tool, the Emotional Culture Index, that gives you just a small dipstick into how the emotions that are currently being experienced in your organization. So if you can put for me in the chat very quickly, what are some of the things that you are doing as an organization to push culture? What are some of those things that you're doing? You can share it in the chat function, and I can read them out as I hear them. What are you currently doing? Let me see from the chat box. What are you currently doing as an organization? Anyone? I'm trying to look at the chat, encouraging people to share about themselves. Yes. Something else? What are some of the behaviors you would like to see when it comes to an organizational culture? Inclusivity, inclusivity. Let's get a pen. Sincerity. Yes. Even in your teams, what are some of the behaviors you'd like to see in your team? Inclusivity, sincerity, participation, and cooperation. All very good ones. So when we talk about inclusivity, sincerity, participation, are we able to put openness? I see there's also openness. Are we able to put something or a way that we can actually share appreciation, measure, how this looks like? How is appreciation of adversity? How do we measure this? Yeah. So, for example, we could talk about sincerity. Sincerity is possibly about being open, being honest, sharing sincerely. How can we measure that? What kind of behaviors speak to sincerity? Participation. How do we measure participation? Cooperation, participation. How do we measure that? How do you measure when people are being open and honest? What are some of the outcomes we expect to see when we have a culture that is participatory and cooperative? One of the things to do is to ask a question like, do you feel included in decisions? Do you feel included in projects? Do you feel that your participation or your contribution is welcome? And these are little surveys that you can create, not even just organizational wide, even for your teams where you are, that can make you start to understand whether some of these things that you want to see in your team are actually being felt or being seen. And if not, you can also include a certain aspect in that particular survey that asks people, what would you like to see more of? So the first step for self-awareness is creating a way of gathering data around the things that you want to see and measuring them. This means that rather than operating from a point of guessing, we are actually getting information that allows us to make interesting decisions about the things that we want to do with the people around us. So when you gather the data and you get, you start growing in the awareness of either your team awareness, organizational awareness, you start understanding the kind of culture that is there. And you then know what kind of culture that you want to have. So creating an EI-driven culture means then what is an EI-driven culture? An EI-driven culture is also centered around these 6 competencies that I just shared earlier on. An EI-driven culture has got a certain level of self-awareness. Yeah. It is present to the problems that are there. It understands where they're coming from. It is not disconnected. So for example, when something goes wrong, and you find that you're blaming 2 or 3 individuals where the problem is actually being brought about by something else. For example, people are not able to do the work very well, but you're not willing to consider the fact that maybe they don't have the resources they require. Maybe they don't have the laptops that they require. Maybe there's not enough adequate learning for them. So self-awareness is to also understand what are some of the reasons that are causing some of the problems you have. When you have that self-awareness, it means then you can also be a bit more fair. And then an EI-driven culture is one that practices equity. It practices fairness. It practices expansive thinking. The second thing that you will see in an EI-driven culture is the intentional drive towards getting to be aware of others and being able to train others to be aware of others. So does the organization conduct sensitization workshops, webinars on the art and the skill of growing in awareness of others? And this leads to empathy. It leads to being able to acknowledge other people as human beings first, and then colleagues. It also leads to people being able to read the mood, read the room, be able to deliver messages at the right time. And the direct result of this is that you will get people who are able to then connect more with each other. And of course, that means the values we've just talked about, sincerity, collaboration, cooperation, openness, start growing. The third thing is about creating trust in your organization. Trust is broken very many times by maybe some of us not being so reliable to our jobs and not fulfilling them to the very best that we could have. Trust sometimes is broken by many things. You know, it could be someone said something about someone, we felt hurt. But trust is really, really broken by the lack of ability to talk about these things. So creating a culture that is open and authentic means that we must be constantly trying to develop a platform where people can share their thoughts. So I will give a small example here about what we call psychological safety. And psychological safety is really the creation of a space that people feel that they can actually contribute without suffering the consequences. It is the sense that you can be yourself without social, political, economical, or emotional costs. That is a culture that at its core has psychological safety. Now, psychological safety has got several steps to it. And what psychological safety does is it tries to reduce social friction. Social friction is where we have friction amongst ourselves, where I attack you as a person, your personality, your ideals. But intellectual friction is where we do things because we are fighting ideologically from a point of view of what needs to be done. So acknowledging that my view is just as equally valuable. It may not be the view that we take, but my ability to contribute is important. And psychological safety has got a few steps, and has the steps do go stepwise. So the first step is inclusion safety. So in your culture, do people feel included? Yeah, do they feel that they belong? Do they feel like they're part of a team? And being part of a team is having team meetings, discussing about issues together, having a common goal. Sometimes it's about during the meetings also including everyone to be able to speak, acknowledging everyone as a team member, giving kudos where it's due, celebrating team wins together, sometimes celebrating not going through team losses together. So people feel included. That's the inclusion safety. The second kind of safety is when we are able to create an environment where people can say they don't know. So when I feel safe and I can say, I don't know how to do this, or I messed up here and I would like to do better. When we do that, we're creating what is called learner safety. The minute people can express that they are not knowledgeable in something and feel that they don't have to pay what we're calling the economic price of it, then you have been able to bring together learner safety. The third one is contributor safety. Contributor safety here is where I am able to contribute or give my ideas and not think that they will be ridiculed or I'll feel embarrassed by it. So an idea is an idea. Yes, sometimes people contribute and we say, just that idea. But because of we've fostered team cohesion, we don't take it that someone thinks our idea is really stupid, although there are ways that you can put that statement and someone is put off. So contributor safety is allowing or setting a platform where people can feel they can contribute and they will not be ridiculed. They'll not feel like they have their ideas have been minimized. And even if it's not the idea that's going to be taken, it's actually been considered. And then the last one is challenger safety. Challenger safety is now the overall one that someone can come and challenge someone else's idea. And challenging is not very comfortable. And when we challenge status quo, we are definitely putting someone else in an uncomfortable position. But because we understand that we're doing this for the betterment of the team, for growing better decisions, then because we have fostered that psychological safety in our teams, challenger safety is not an issue. So I can actually conflict with you. Our conversations can turn into arguments and we can argue over something. But at the end of the day, when we finish the argument, we go back to work and we're able to interact. But the whole purpose of engaging in that conflict is to get the best of the ideas. So psychological safety has these 4 stages that it must go through for you to get what we call a truly psychological base. And psychological safety is not possible without emotional intelligence. So if you're looking to create a culture that is driven by EI, you're also looking to push and to also raise awareness and grow awareness around emotional intelligence. So what you need to do is to speak to an EI expert and be able to have them carry out some sort of either training sessions for your team or webinars for your team where they start to understand what is emotional intelligence, what does it mean to show up as emotionally intelligent people, so that we're able to create that psychological safety that is required for us to to have teams of trust. That is under the area of authenticity. Are there any questions so far, or is there something that you would like to put on the chat or to ask, even as we go on to the next three skills of an EI-driven culture? Any comments? You can put them on the chat. Okay. So under authenticity, and once we are done speaking about authenticity, the next place that we go to and the next competency that we go to is emotional reasoning. Now, emotional reasoning is about being expansive, about the way that we approach decision-making in organizations. An EI-driven culture understands the need for its decisions to be seen as fair and equitable, especially when it comes to human beings and people. So here, you're actually asking yourselves, what policies do we have in place? What processes do we have in place? Because policies and process are there to provide a structure within which we all operate. If we didn't have that, today you're giving a pay rise to this person, tomorrow you're not giving a pay rise to this person. So you're definitely just supposed to grow, if I may say that, a place where you have a system, a fair system of reward that is followed by everyone. You know, today you're not rewarding this one too much and this one you're not rewarding them. So it provides that fair play. But in emotional reasoning, we also want you to ask yourselves, where does inequity exist? Where sometimes do people have less resources? Or where, in terms of your leaders, where do they need to spend more time and more attention sometimes? What is the values of the organization? Do these people know the values? Because values are supposed to be like a guiding framework, yeah, guiding rails that people operate within, so that when also they're making decisions, especially the difficult decisions for organizations, they're asking, what are the values of where I work? And how do these values then play back into the decision that I'm making, so that I know which decision to take? Sometimes both decisions are good, but what you pick is driven by the value that is held dear by a certain organization. So emotional reasoning is really about, how expansive are we being about developing robust policies, putting them in place, over and above everything, educating, communicating, and telling people about those policies so they can understand them and what they stand for, and then using them and utilizing them without fear or favor. And where you find that perhaps something needs to be changed, communicating that rationale, saying the reason behind what you did, so that people can also see and understand and take it as for lack of a better word, they understand the process of thought. And so if, for example, I can give one where you might have in your team someone who is struggling with something, and you might end up spending time working with that person. And someone else in your team could think that you're spending too much time with this person and they don't understand why. So communicating your rationale to the other team members as to why you're spending so much time with this other person allows them to understand, so that's what it is, and to stop filling their heads with other stories or other reasons, or saying you should be doing this instead of this. So again, communicating your decisions is very, very important, and consulting your decisions. So again, in terms of an EI-driven culture, the process of making decisions, what are the frameworks provided? Do we teach people how to make more expansive decisions? Do we allow open door policies where people can walk in and out to solicit help from decisions? So those are the things you're thinking about when you're talking about a culture, an EI-driven culture, and how they make decisions. Then when you talk about self-management and resilience, the well-being of people, an EI-driven culture cares about the well-being of people. And this could be in terms of their working hours. Are they working too late? Are they getting overwhelmed? Are you tracking whether people are taking their leave as well? Are you tracking whether, there's so many things that determine our well-being. Are people happy at work? Do they have a friend at work that they speak to, they go for lunch with, because they spend a lot of time at work? What other policies do you have that support people? For example, in terms of health, what policies do you have? In terms of mental health, do you have occasions or webinars that support people? In terms of team health, do you allow for team buildings at times when these teams can meet and just be themselves and grow together? So self-management is about building the resilience of your organization. And a culture anchored in emotional intelligence understands that the well-being of its people is important. The well-being of a team is important. And so you will not find someone chasing another person after working hours at night because they did not manage their time well, and therefore they need to work. They are forcing a person to work after hours and sometimes into the wee hours of the night, unless of course it's something one-off and it's a project that needs to be done. But it is not the norm. It is usually just the one-off, because work is work, and sometimes we need to put in a lot more to be able to finalize some things. But more often than not, people are having the time out that they deserve over the weekends. They're able to do that apart from when there's too much work. And that is about self-management and building resilience in organizations. And then about being an empowering space. Are you calling out inappropriate behavior? If there's bullying at work, do you have policies against bullying at work? Do you listen to people when they talk about things like bullying at work? Basically, when you talk about positive influence, one of the other things is, do you support people do you have policies around how people get support and how they feel empowered when they are at work? So these are the 6 competencies that I would share when it comes to an EI-driven culture, starting from self-awareness all the way to positive influence. I would like again to stop here just to ask if there are any other questions or comments. Questions or comments? Okay. Any comments? Okay. So suffice it to say that if you want to have a culture that is really driven by emotional intelligence, the first thing that I would say we need to do is first to train for emotional intelligence. And this means delivering workshops around emotional intelligence, delivering trainings around what is emotional intelligence, growing people in self-awareness so that they can understand their impact. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. That means recognizing your emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, and how this affect your interactions with others. So the first step is to growing an awareness of what is emotional intelligence. And that helps equip people in the organization to show up in emotionally intelligent behaviors, to be more self-aware about themselves, to regularly reflect and seek feedback. The second one is to be able to manage their emotions so that we are staying calm under pressure. We are also having not disruptive emotions, but being able to handle stress better, to make better decisions, and to have a model of instability in our teams. Because when you have a temperamental team, today is like this, tomorrow is like the other, then the team members are not going to enjoy being around you as a person or as a team leader. So what else? Have you put in place? The third thing I would say is the second thing after you sensitize for emotional intelligence, raise the team self-awareness, keep equipping them with the skills of growing their well-being. The second thing is to look for avenues of motivation and inspiration. And those could be stories that are told by your team, celebrating successes, recognizing other people's hard work, being able to give mentorship sessions or inspirational speakers every so often in the team to build up that positivity, to build up that the organizations feel that, yes, we have a big goal, but we can do this, and to keep pushing for the boundary or the envelope. So you're constantly putting in also time for inspiration. The third thing is to measure. You cannot attend to what you can't measure. So where do you want to be? Do you have an emotional intelligence assessment that you can use to check your leaders' level of emotional intelligence, to check your teammates' level of emotional intelligence? If you can measure it, then you can change it. You can check for the things that we call high emotional intelligence behaviors and see which ones are being exhibited and which ones are not. So it starts from there. Third thing, you have to be able to measure. And remember, we talked about self-awareness as an organization being very, very important to building the kind of culture you want. So the third thing is about measurement. The fourth thing is introducing coaching and mentorship as a style of management and leadership. So with coaching and mentorship, it means that managers now stop operating from the compliance style that we know, but have more coaching conversations with the people that they lead. What this does is two things. One, it strengthens the relationships between the manager and the people that report to them. Two, it helps grow those people so that they are growing in problem solving. They are able to handle more tasks. So at the end of the day, delegation is more effective. So you're having a team that is growing in skills and it is able to handle a lot of the things that are coming to them and through this coaching and mentorship approach of leadership style. So those are my four. And my question now is, what would be something else that you would add when it comes to an organization that is driven from an EI perspective? I can see there is a question. Please, where would you say we are regards EI in Africa? Are we receptive? Have we learned it effectively? Are there nations or regions doing better than others? Finally, East, West, thank you. Okay, so where are we in terms of emotional intelligence? I believe that the conversations have really started. We do work in various regions. We're working in West Africa, we're working in East Africa, we're doing a bit of work in South Africa and North Africa. And yes, the conversations around this topic of emotional intelligence might seem foreign, but I don't think it is an entirely foreign concept to us as Africans, because some of these things we practiced before our lives got disrupted by the current way that we live. And I think more is about relearning some of the things that we used to do. So for example, the cultivation of self-awareness, especially in the generation for the millennials and the Gen Z, where it's highest, people in these particular generations are growing to be more self-aware than possibly the generations of Gen X. But it's also because there's a lot of messaging around the benefits of growing in self-awareness and even the skill and the habits of growing in self-awareness. So I would say that EI is growing in Africa. We do have organizations that have started using EI itself as a way of growing business. And I have one particular organization that we are working with, and they've measured business metrics. They have been using educating for emotional intelligence for the last 2 years, and they've gotten great results because of that, both business results and both people metric results. Victor, did you want to speak?
Yes. If you're done, that is if you're done.
Yes.
Oh, I think I want to begin by appreciating you. Thank you so much for filling in, covering for me. I've not had a network challenge like this before. But thank you so much, and thank you for laying that ground floor understanding and appreciation of emotional intelligence. While this is very important, like you just established, for many in Africa, emotional intelligence is a little bit on the new side, but it has been our way of life, but maybe not well organized or maybe not captured the way we are, experiencing it. But the truth is that if you look at the Economic Forum, their prediction of the future of work, and there is this four format they've developed of recent, which is one, personal development, interpersonal development, management, and leadership. If you look at across the board how it goes as a value chain, emotional intelligence plays a role across every one of them, whether from a personal point, whether you're dealing from an interpersonal relationship level or you're dealing from a management level as well as a leadership level. So whichever way you go, emotional intelligence is almost like saying it is the future. Just like we say technology is the future, emotional intelligence is the future because ultimately humans, the business of the future is the business of human beings. Ability to understand them, ability to manage, ability to inspire, and also lead has become very, very important. So thank you so much for laying that foundation. And for everyone in the room, you need to understand that this is just the beginning of a journey. We hope to keep doing and bringing this insight to you almost weekly, what we call a leadership and talent, webinar series, where consistently Vicky will have the opportunity and other experts to be able to lead us in this journey. So Vicky, I want to say thank you. Thank you and thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor. So unless there are other questions from the floor.
Okay. Everywhere seems quiet. They are just listening, taking obviously. But then sometimes maybe they are just chewing it in, trying to understand the whole scope of emotional intelligence. And clearly, in terms of organizational culture, it shows the importance of it. And I wouldn't be surprised that most people are actually, knowing this for the first time. So I wouldn't be shocked that they're only taking out time to just chew it over. However, it will still make sense if we get some feedback. So it will really, really make sense if we get a feedback. Hello, house.
Maybe we can get some chats, some more chat, some people on the chat.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Okay, if there are no questions, then I would like to say thank you very much for being with us at this particular webinar, and I look forward to seeing you during the next one. Thank you all, then have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I know you've done some very good value for us here, not only for those who are here, and perhaps for those who didn't make it, maybe for work on one reason or the other, and we'll see how to connect with them and then drop the link for them to connect with us. Thank you, Vicky.